So once again, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest installment in our 5-part series hosted by the Employers Confederation of Zimbabwe. This 5-part series today focuses on wellness and productivity in the organization. And I would like to take the opportunity to welcome every single person who is represented here today. And of course, keeping in mind in the main, our presenters, Maria Moore and Memory Ngui. We are delighted that they've accepted our invitation. Both professionals are well known in their different niches, if we may call them that. And we are looking forward to hearing from them and to share with them. A reminder, ladies and gentlemen, as long as we are together, please keep your mics muted and to direct your questions to the chat box. That will enable us to be able to deal with them expeditiously, even as the session progresses. Interestingly, before I hand you over to our Executive Director, today's session, focusing as it does on productivity and wellness, brought for me to mind a book written in 1967 by well-known management consultant, the late Peter Drucker. Many of you may have come across his books in management circles. But in 1967, Peter Drucker correctly anticipated the direction in which the working professionals were going to be moving. And in that book, he anticipates a situation in which the professionals would have to take more control over their careers, and in doing so, have to manage certain aspects of their, well, I'll call it wellness now, but he pointed out 5 areas in which professionals were going to have to take over the management of their own careers. He calls them knowledge workers, and the knowledge worker today is a person whose time has arrived in this part of the world, because your career will no longer be actively managed by the HR departments. Knowledge workers today will have to manage their own careers. But this has all sorts of impacts on our wellness and the need to maintain engagement or productivity as it happens. So these particular topics are are topics whose time has come, and we are delighted that you can join us to share and to pick up a few ideas on how we can remain engaged and productive even as the pace of change continues to accelerate. So without further ado, allow me, if you will, to hand over to Mrs. Nesta Mukwewa, the Executive Director of the Employers Confederation of Zimbabwe, to give us our welcome remarks and guide us in terms of how we will progress today. So Nesta, good morning to you, ma'am, and welcome.
Good morning to you, Patrick. Allow me to start by saying, this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice in it, especially during these times of COVID-19, all protocol observed. Allow me to start by saying that I want to welcome you all to our second series of Adapt and Adjust. Today we are going to look at wellness in the organization. And as you all know, employers go into business to make profit. And for one to make profit, you need to look at the factors of production for you to be productive. And one of the key factors in terms of the measurement of productivity is labor, for you to measure that output. It is important, therefore, that we look at the topic of wellness and how it is linked to productivity. We have invited key experts. We have got Ms. Moore. We also invited Memory Ngui on productivity. And you will also find that we are going to have key speakers who are also health practitioners, Dr. Tatira from Wellness Health. They are going to share with us the ideas on how we can have a healthy workforce so that it contributes towards productivity. With those few remarks, I want to wish you a very fruitful and interactive 1 hour. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
And thank you, Madam. This swiftly now moves us to the introduction of our first speaker, who is a renowned expert in the fast-growing area of wellness in the organization. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you in short order to Maria Moore, who is a registered nurse and founder of Your Wellness Matters 365, very aptly chosen name there for her organization, if I may repeat it. Your Wellness Matters 365 is what she's contributing. So she works with partners, but apart from that, also with community members and other organizations to develop and master long-term behavior change. And this is critical in our time because with change accelerating in the way that it is, the only way you and I are going to cope is by changing how we behave so that we can adapt and adjust, and in that way remain relevant to what is happening around us. So we are looking forward to what she has to contribute. She has spent a lot of time in the United States of America and remains active there and pursuing in various ways things that promote wellness and various of her HR-led initiatives. So without further ado, allow me, if you will, to hand over to our speaker, Maria Moore, and say, Maria, good morning to you and welcome. It is an absolute pleasure to have you with us. And I hope you are as excited as we are to be hearing from you.
Good morning. And thank you so much for that introduction. And so basically, I'll just wait for Audrey to share my slides. But my presentation today is going to focus on how to create a successful, sustainable wellness plan in the organization. So not only does it need to be successful, but it needs to be sustainable and something that can be passed on for years to come and built onto. So basically, the employees are the backbone of our organization. And because the level of their productivity is linked to health and wellness, their health and well-being, or lack thereof, is associated with the organization's success or failure. So this will be on my first slide. It is a known fact that poor health leads to poor productivity. Just use yourself, for example. If you were not feeling well on any particular day, you do not feel like getting up and going to work. What you do feel like doing is staying home and wanting to spend time to heal. So productivity is reduced when you're not feeling well. Therefore, for an organization that promotes a healthy worksite for its employees, those organizations are in a much better position to thrive. Moving on, there is a huge disconnect between perception and reality. Perception is what people perceive should be offered. It's employee driven, it is need specific, and it's sustainable. But reality is based on what actually is offered. It is industry driven and it's pretty much short lived. For example, if you're looking at a biometric screening, companies encourage their employees to go to their physician to get a biometric screening. They go, they get the screening, they get the results without the results being explained and without them having to understand the results. They pack them away in a drawer or put them somewhere, or sometimes even throw them away. So the idea is, the question is, how does that actually really help the employee to improve their health and wellness? To have a plan of action that they can follow. It really doesn't, because they're not being given the information, they're not being given the tools, they've not been given the explanation, they've not been given a plan, and there is never any follow-through. So the idea then is, how does this really affect the wellness in your organization, or the wellness of your employees in your organization? And therefore, how does it affect your company's productivity? Too many organizations look at employee wellness programs as a cost and are therefore looking for a return on investment. It is time to shift the perspective and the perception from a return on investment to a value of investment. So the question becomes, what if you really did have a healthy, resilient workforce? What would that do, and how would that help the productivity in your business or in your organization? So, moving on. In this introduction, well, in this presentation, I will cover a little bit of data. I will explain the dimensions of wellness, what wellness is and what it does entail. I will explain how perception is actually vital when it comes to creating and developing a successful, sustainable program. Explain the principles of ADPI in your wellness program, and then give you some takeaways at the end of the presentation that you can take with you and implement within your own organization. So with regards to data, companies offering wellness programs see a significant increase in productivity. The employees who participate in a wellness program increase their productivity by 1 full workday per month. So that's 12 workdays a year of excess productivity. And studies have suggested that an average worker is only productive for about 3 hours a day. When you consider that your employees on average spend an 8-hour day working, that's not a lot. And then when you actually move on and consider the times that we're in with regards to this COVID, where people are working from home, so many people are actually working way longer than 8 hours a day or are available for more than 8 hours a day. And when you consider the amount of time they're available and the amount of time they're productive, it really makes you think to take a step back and consider how you can improve the health and wellness of your employees in order to have a more productive workforce. So, dimensions of wellness. What is health and what does it entail? Health is a state of body and wellness is a state of being. For any successful program that is sustainable, one needs to take an holistic approach to health and wellness and to the development of health and wellness programs. Wellness is not one-dimensional, as you can see from this graphic. It embraces several dimensions, each of which relate to different aspects and experiences of life. So these dimensions of wellness are interconnected like links in a chain. They form the foundation on which to build a comprehensive, holistic plan that is sustainable and inclusive. Each link plays a vital role in the overall success of your employee wellness program. However, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So in order to figure out how to even begin to develop a program, what you need to assess is what your weakest link is. Once you find your weakest link, that then becomes your start point to build your foundation and then move on up. Moving on. So there are 8 dimensions of wellness, and I've just listed them in no particular order. First one is your physiological wellness, which basically entails movement and nutrition. What you want to do within your company is ensure that your employees are able to be active, whether they're active actually right at their workstation, or whether you have a gym or health facility within your organization, or even whether you provide them with a space outside where they can take a walk or run or do practice yoga, some safe space that they can work out in. The number one key here, though, is to ensure that the workers don't feel as though they are skipping work or wasting time. Many employees will actually refrain from working out at work because they feel as though executives, leaders, and other colleagues will look at them as though they're actually skiving or taking off work and going off and not being productive. So the idea with movement is to ensure that you have a program that offers not only a safe space for your employees to move, but a space that where they don't feel guilty that they're actually doing that. The second bracket of the physiological wellness is nutrition. One of the main things with nutrition is to allow or develop a program that provides a nutrient-dense food availability. So whether it's a cafeteria, whether it's a vending machine, the idea is to try and educate on nutrition, what it means, and how to eat to nourish the body and heal the body as opposed to harm the body. So enabling the individuals to make healthier choices with regards to food. That will come under your physiological wellness. The next dimension of wellness is mental wellness. Stress is one of the main components of mental wellness, and it has a huge negative impact on well-being and absolutely a huge impact on productivity. Your workplace, for instance, workplace telephone pressure is one of the main areas that a lot of people are looking into now, especially with this COVID situation. A lot of employees are available, like I said, almost on a 24/7 basis, because we're all linked with this technology with phones and computers. So many leaders feel that they can contact their employees at any time of the day. So the boundaries of work have actually, or work time, have actually been blurred a little bit. So in order to make sure that your employees are not so mentally stressed, what you want to do is make sure that they have an ability to detach or disconnect. For example, in France, the employees in France actually have a right to disconnect. So the boundaries for work, an 8-hour day, a 12-hour day, are very, very succinct. And once that time limit has passed, the employees are allowed to disconnect, and they do not have to answer their phone or go on to a meeting or Zoom call or whatever the case may be. So the idea is to allow your employees the opportunity to disconnect and get on with their lives. So basically what you want to do is minimize your stresses at the workplace, because you cannot serve from an empty cup. Next dimension of wellness is spiritual wellness. And this is basically, one of the examples I have here is allowing people a safe place to practice their own religion. This one has there's a lot of different opinions on this, but I felt like the example I wanted to give was during my travels back and forth, I was at the Washington, D.C. Airport in the States, and I came across an interfaith chapel, which basically allowed access for all faiths under one roof. And I felt like that was such a great initiative, giving everybody an access to a place where they can practice their religion. Many people feel as though feel like they cannot practice their religion the way they would normally at home during their work stage, during their work time in their 24-hour or their 5-day work period. And allowing them to do that, or at least giving them the opportunity to do that, will really a lot of times change the perspective on what they feel about their company, how they view their company or their organization, and the wellness initiatives that are offered for them. Environmental wellness is our next dimension of wellness. And I broke this down into 2 sections: environmental toxicity, which really incorporates your physical environment. Things like light, color, air within the building, and your external environment, which is things like I mentioned before, a safe place to walk or run, or a place where you can meditate, or a place where you can do some yoga. If you are afforded the luxury of having a lot of land within your organization or around your organization, you can always do that. A lot of times, people will partner with parks and recreation and have the employees, especially if it's just a walk away or very close to the company or the organization, employees will be allowed to leave the building and go and walk in the park or in the safe space and then come back to work. Then I've got occupational toxicity. That includes occupational health and wellness, or occupational health and safety, which the company will usually strategize to work on and implement. There's also marginalization when it comes to occupational toxicity. The relationship that you have with your coworkers and how they actually accept you. And marginalization can be anything that really impacts your engagement with work, and can include things like your gender, age, ethnicity, educational background, all the things that make you a little different from the rest of your organization can actually lead to marginalization, which of course then will impact your productivity. And then we have leadership style. Everybody's different with their leadership style. So the idea is to figure out how your company or your organization leads. What types of leaders you have. Is it more of a hierarchy structure, or something that's a little bit more inclusive and approachable? So that will include your environmental wellness in the organization. Social wellness is the next dimension of wellness, and really just entails who you connect with and who you spend your time with. That will influence things like productivity, motivation, initiative, all those things. So what you want to do is create a social environment where employees are actually working together and supporting each other, motivating each other, than one where they are marginalized. Okay. The next dimension is educational wellness. One of the most important things here with educational wellness is to ensure that employees have access to the tools that enable them to manage their growth rate, okay, or their growth within the industry. They need to be able to be given tools that help to improve their skills and resilience in the workplace. That empowers your employees. Once they're empowered, they feel a sense of, for themselves, they'll feel a sense of satisfaction and achievement, but they also will feel as though the company is taking an interest in them, in their development. So it's not only just about the company and its advances and its goals, but it's also included in that is the goals, aspirations of the employee. When those two things come together, there's a growth pattern that emerges, and certainly an increasing level of productivity. So occupational wellness is my next slide. And that's really linked to educating wellness and the opportunity to grow and expand and improve performance. Anyone who has chosen a specific occupation wants to improve and grow in their ability to achieve, right? So they feel that they want to improve their performance. And once given that opportunity, there is an increase in productivity. And the thing about the occupational wellness and the educational wellness is linked. They really center around educating your employees so that they have an opportunity to grow and improve performance. And then our final dimension of wellness is financial wellness. Financial wellness has been looked at as the #1 source of stress within the organization. And again, the company, in order to improve productivity, the company needs to provide money management tools and basic education about money so that the employees have an understanding as to how to best manage their money so that they can be or feel a lot more successful, not only within their own lives and within their family lives, but also within the company. So those dimensions of wellness are the 8 dimensions that come together that will, once you tap into each one, will really help you to start to form a wellness program that is inclusive and includes all the dimensions and is not only focused on how much your employees are moving, what they're eating, and stress management. Okay, because all of these are linked, and you'll find that as you take, if one of the links is weak, the rest of the plan or the rest of the program actually starts to crack, the foundation starts to crack, and the program is not as sustainable or successful as anticipated or as wished. So once you've got your understanding of the dimensions of wellness, one of the main things that needs to be addressed before you even start to begin to develop your program is to find out or understand what the perception of wellness is within your organization. What does the wellness mean not only to your executives, but what does wellness mean to each and every one of your employees? Once you have a global organization, you'll find that you have so many employees from so many different parts of the world, and everybody's view or understanding of wellness is very culturally influenced. So the idea here is not to impose your idea of wellness onto someone else, but to learn about what everybody's perception of wellness is, and then try and integrate that into a program that is very inclusive. So without a doubt, perception matters when it comes to designing and implementing your employee wellness program. Perception is actually how the culture affects the way the individuals see the world, and therefore how they see or understand health and wellness within their culture. Your perspective is actually viewing through the eyes of the individual, using or taking into consideration their native environment as well as their social influence. So just to give you a little bit of an example, because weight is such a hot topic within health and wellness. Everybody's so focused on weight. When you go to Europe, for instance, or if you go to the States, how people perceive weight there is very different to how people perceive weight maybe like here in Africa. So how weight is regarded in different cultures. People of color, African Americans, people from Africa view weight as something that is actually healthy. They can view it as something that is healthy. And people of those cultures will use words such to describe their physical weight. They'll use words such as, oh, I'm just big boned, or I'm healthy, or I'm thick. And within tradition, sometimes that is actually not frowned upon. It is looked upon with admiration. Whereas if you go into a Western culture, it's a completely different perception of weight. So the idea is to figure out what is the perception of health and wellness. Culturally, how do people perceive health and wellness, and how do they define it? And once you have that, you can start to create a common ground and form a plan that is inclusive, but that is still health and wellness focused. That plan will be a lot more successful, and it will be a lot more sustainable because you will have more buy-in from your employees. Okay, so that being said, your next step now, once you've determined or understood your dimensions of wellness, and you're going into perception of wellness within your organization, you have those two entities. The next step is then to start to develop your program. And in order to develop the program, I've come up with this increment of ADPIE, ADPIE. And what that does is it helps you develop a program, again, that is inclusive, that is sustainable. But the best thing about this is that it can be applied to any situation, whether your employees are at work. So if you are a company where the employees are actually back to work, this can be used and applied. Or if your employees are now working remotely from home, the same principles can be applied. So your first principle is to assess. You absolutely have to do a needs assessment, and that needs assessment has to start with your executives. You have to assess the needs of your executives, and you also have to assess what wellness actually means to your executives as well. So herein again folds in perception of wellness. If you have an executive who perceives wellness one way, and then your employees who perceive it the other way, what you have to do is you have to try and find a common ground so that all needs are met. You do not want to impose your ideas onto your employees. So again, if your executives have a certain view or perception of health and wellness, what cannot happen is that they then impose their view on the rest of the company. This is just it will not work. It's going to fail. So you have to figure out what their leadership wants and how they perceive wellness, what your employees want and how they perceive wellness, and then marry the two together. One size fits one, not all. So you also have to assess a readiness to change. Because as you can imagine, if one person perceives something one way and the other perceives it a completely different way, there is going to be a little bit of friction. And change has to happen in order for integration to occur. So you need to assess a readiness to change so that this whole plan can actually work. So our next form is developing. Once you have all the information, what you want to do is start to develop your plan. And your plan obviously is going to be based on the results of your assessment. The plan, in order to be successful, has to be employee-centered, executive-centered. So there needs to be buy-in from both your employees and your executives. And once that is done, you will find that there will be more engagement. There'll be a much better vested, there'll be more vested in the program because everybody will feel heard, they will feel valued, and they will feel as though their opinion mattered. So whenever you're determining what your program is going to be, you have to make sure that all the information you collect from your assessment is weaved into this development plan, this determination plan, okay? So that once it's rolled out, as the plan is rolled out, the executives and the employees are going to be able to pinpoint or they're going to be able to see where their input has been implemented. Okay? So once you've determined what your plan is, the next step is go ahead and get that plan going. Okay? Develop the plan and put it into action. The plan needs to be strategic, and again, it has to have its foundation in the results of your assessment. And once again, like I've mentioned, and I'm going to keep mentioning it, it has to have the leadership buy-in as well as the employee buy-in, so that the culture, you can create a culture of wellness. People will come together, they will be more vested in the plan or in the actual program, and then slowly but surely you will develop this culture of wellness that is very inclusive. Okay? So now you have your plan, you implement the plan. Implementation basically means that your programs that you have developed are going into action. Timeline is very, very important. There needs to be a timeline. When your plan is going to be rolled out, how long each plan. It's not going to be just one plan or just one program. There will be numerous programs. For instance, your nutrition program, your physical education program, your program that will help with financial wellness, your program that will help with educational wellness with regards to growth for individuals within the community. So all these things will be working in the background. And what you want to do is create those programs and then create timelines for those programs. The most important thing about timelines is that you're giving the company, the organization, as well as the employees, an opportunity to look at the program, invest in the program, and then to actually grow in the program, to see how that program works for them. Once you have a timeline, you then have to revisit those programs and see what works and what doesn't work. While you're implementing your program, you also need to integrate support from the leaders, again, leadership buy-in, and then support from your employees. And for instance, this will include things like internal wellness champions. So if you're running a smoking cessation program, for instance, your employees who have stopped smoking, who used to smoke and who have stopped smoking, those will be your great internal wellness champions to champion your smoking cessation program, because they've been there, done that. So all the information that they have, the experience that they have, they can then, with the knowledge and experience that they have, they can then help their colleagues to also go in the same direction and also try and stop that smoking habit so that they can improve their wellness. So it's just a connection. What you do is you find people who are enthusiastic about something, find people who have done or engaged in a program and have been successful, and those people become your champions. But they're internal, they're your own sources as opposed to going to find an external vendor. It really helps to boost the morale, not only of the employees who are in that space, who are the new wellness champions, but also shows that for the other employees, shows that there's all these opportunities within the company as well. They allow us these opportunities to express ourselves, to grow, and to help. So not only do you get support from your leaders, you get support from your employees, and then also you need some strategic partnerships, and those partnerships will come from the outside, your outside vendors, your medical companies, your nonprofits. Those guys can come in and do things for you. For instance, you can partner with a bank in order to create a robust financial wellness program. You can partner with one of the medical companies so that they can help you to put together a robust program for stress management. So you've got all these different partnerships that you can integrate with while you're implementing your plan. And then the next move will be to evaluate. And this is why timelines are so important. What you want to do is evaluate the success of the plan, but you want to give the plan enough time so that people can actually engage and see some kind of results. All right. So once that happens, you then evaluate your strategies, your protocol, your partnerships, and you then can determine what works and what doesn't work. You obviously keep what works, you tweak what doesn't work, again with employee buy-in, with executive buy-in, and then you restructure a new plan that, so it would be maybe in financial wellness, again, occupational wellness, spiritual wellness. You create a new plan and roll that one out. So this model is dynamic. It is just, you don't just set your plan and then that's your plan. It is dynamic because we as individuals are dynamic people. We change. People get older, their lifestyle or life circumstances change. They get married, they get divorced, they have children, they hire their education. So everything is changing. And what's nice about this plan is once you get to your evaluation, you are able to roll with the changes. You're able to view the changes in your organization, see where they come from, see how they affect your employees and therefore affect your productivity, and you can move on from there. So it's a dynamic process, but it is a process that can be carried from an organization that works within its structure to an organization that is working with employees that are remote and everything in between. Okay, so your key takeaways here are number one, successful sustainable worksite programs will require executive buy-in, 100%. Employee buy-in, 100%. And again, I keep repeating this because it's so important. An understanding and embracing of the dimensions of wellness. Once you embrace all the dimensions, and again, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So to start your program off, find where your weakest link is, start there, and that will start to build your foundation for this program. And then 100% you need to factor in perception. It is so important. And I feel that it is the one thing that will keep your program successful, sustainable, inclusive, and therefore one that will definitely improve the productivity of your employees and therefore improve your company's bottom line. And that's it for my presentation.
And thank you, Marion. Thank you very much. Eloquently delivered and also very precise with your language there, because I think it speaks to issues and scenarios that are instantly recognizable in all our lives, actually, at the moment. So we want to just take some time to thank you for your delivery and indeed your input. And ladies and gentlemen, what we are going to suggest is that if indeed you have questions, as I suspect you will, please continue to make use of your chat box. We will entertain questions at the end of the whole session, because what we are going to do now is to move on to our next presenter. So allow me, if you will, to just take a short breath by introducing him. Memory Ngui is well known to most of us, certainly in the country. But he has expanded his influence well beyond Zimbabwe, and rightfully so, because he's been an HR practitioner for many, many years. And apart from dabbling in all sorts of HR-related disciplines, certainly in more recent times, I know from hearing him speak, he has, I think, I'd have to say, focused very, very closely on expanding our definition of productivity, how we understand it, always focusing on seeing the issue of productivity unfolding in our marketplace, because I think it has become topical and certainly relevant. So we welcome Memory Ngui, one of the very few qualified psychologists in the country. It is a pleasure to have you with us, Memory. Always a pleasure to hear from you. And we say to you, good morning, sir.
Thank you, Patrick. How are you?
Well, thank you. And you?
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, I think like Patrick indicated, I am carry on from where the last presenter ended in terms of employee wellness and productivity. I'll go deeper into the impact in terms of what impact wellness has on productivity. I'm more oriented towards the evidence-based, like she indicated. I think she also shared a few research. I'm more inclined towards research because if you look at the movement now, we are moving towards more evidence-based management. So I will try to share some of the research findings. But when you look at productivity, I want you to probably take note that the way I've looked at this particular presentation is there are various ways of defining productivity. The one that I have used in most of the presentations at EMCOZ previously is really a high-level technical definition where you are looking at productivity in terms of producing more output efficiently and basically looking at both output and input, and technically looking at whether you are using those inputs efficiently, because productivity is mainly concerned with how efficiently you are producing your output. Okay, for example, if you look at 2 periods, last year, if you produced a certain volume of output with 20 employees, this year you produce probably more volume or the same volume with 10 employees, which means your employee productivity has gone up because you are using your resources more efficiently. So the bottom line in terms of productivity is that you are using your resources more efficiently to produce better output compared to a previous period. That's how you look at it. The other way to look at it is to focus on what we call profit-linked productivity measurement, which mainly focuses on profitability of the organization. The reason why most practitioners have moved towards a profit-based productivity assessment is that it has got very high, what you call in psychology, very high face validity. When you start talking about profit, everyone pays attention. So in terms of that definition, profitability or productivity is a result of productivity plus what is called price recovery. Just to give you an example, if you're looking at an organization, let's say between two periods, 2019 and 2020, the difference in profitability of the organization is, for argument's sake, 10 million. If you look at those two, what we are concerned from a productivity point of view is to then say, that 5 million that you're talking about difference, where did it come from? Okay, was it as a result of people working more efficiently and productively and producing, or it was a result of price recovery, or it was a result of price inflation? Basically, that's what it means. To put it more simply for others, if we look at revenue, for example, which is your sales in dollars, the mathematical formula for that sales in dollars is equals to your quantity sold times the price of the item that you are selling. So there are two ways of increasing your revenue. You can increase your price, or you can increase your quantity. If you increase your quantity and sell more, we are talking about productivity. If you increase your price and probably selling less, we are talking about what is called price recovery. You are over-recovering your money from price instead of moving volumes. So that's another way to simplify it. There are formulas for calculating that. But if you look now, the proper definition in the context of what we are talking about, where we are looking at individuals and how they are being productive, we are really looking at mainly about value creation. Is the person better today than they were before, or they were before the previous day? That's the definition that I'm going to focus on today. Where say, are people creating more value, whether it's profit, whether it's customer service, and many other indicators? Are they creating more value today than what they did yesterday? So that's the definition that I want you to work on. Today, I'm not focusing on the technical definition that we normally use when we are calculating, for example, when we are doing collective bargaining, where we are doing productivity-based bargaining. I'm really looking at the productivity as related to your common value creation indicators that are there. Because ultimately, if you are creating value, it's very likely that productivity will also go up. So as we went into the COVID period, you find that the definition of work and what people are calling work, people tried to some extent to try to change this definition somehow. But if you go back to the definition of work in terms of the psychological definition of work, you will notice that work does not change simply because they've changed the location where you're working from. Work is about output. You are putting input to produce output, which is the whole value chain of productivity. So I was wondering why people would then say work has changed. Work has not changed. What has changed is the location where you are doing the work. In actual fact, if you look at research, you notice that when lockdown started, productivity in some organizations went up when people were working from home, but it started going down. And even if you look at recent research, it's also showing the same trend. Productivity tends to go up in the first 3 to 6 months. It goes up. After that, it goes down. So for those that are advocating for permanent work from home, they are not basing it on science, because science is indicating that there is no clear advantage long-term in people working from home. Yes, it will save you a few costs here and there, but if you put everything together in the context of productivity, remember productivity is input in, output, and output produced. So if you look at that, you'll find that there is no really advantage in working from home. But it's good if you are in a pandemic like what we are now, but long term, there's no advantage in working from home. In actual fact, you'll find that when people are working from home, they get the excitement initially of working from home and they really produce output. But the biggest obstacle and bottleneck at the present moment is the leadership and management practices that are not suited to working from home. If you remember, there's a lot of research that was done in the period, in the last 6-7 months, on how managers are struggling to manage people working from home. For example, those managers, when they are not seeing you, they feel you are not doing work. So they end up micromanaging, and that tend to frustrate workers, and productivity tend to go down. So we don't have a model for supervising people to work from home. Even the companies, big companies internationally, that had initially said they are going to work from home permanently. I have noticed two of them have now changed. They've now given a date of, say, by mid-2021. They keep on shifting, coming backwards in order to bring people back to work. Even if you look in our current situation in Zimbabwe now, you actually notice that a lot of people have actually gone back to work physically because people are struggling to be able to match working from home and the kind of work that they need to do. And even the African setup is even more difficult. If you remember, domestic violence went up when people started, people went into lockdown and working from home. Those challenges have not gone away, as I will show you. So when we ask the employers what is the impact of COVID or the lockdown on their business, this is what we got. This was at the initial stage of the lockdown. You can see about 22% of the organizations started struggling immediately after the lockdown. After lockdown was kicked in, and the others, some negative impact, 53%, which means that roughly about over 75% of the companies had some form of problem because of working from home. We had no infrastructure, we had no mechanism for supervising people, we had no mechanism for social distancing, and all these issues are problematic. But if you go look now, especially in this country, you'll find that probably by now 75% of the employees and the managers are all back at work one way or the other, which speaks to the research findings that have been found. Which levels of employees are working from home? Because naturally you find your senior managers, professionals and middle managers, they've got the gadgets to work from home, and most of their work is knowledge work anyway. If you go into the non-managerial staff, you notice that these are the people who are actually interfacing with the product. It's very difficult for them to work from home. If you are producing bricks, you can't work from home. You can't manufacture those bricks from your home. If you are producing beverages, you can't do that from your home. So there are constraints in terms of that. So we need to put all these things into context. There are some sectors that are suitable for working from home. And if you look at statistics that we're putting, 7.8% of the staff of the global workforce could work from home before COVID. And this has jumped upwards, but it was a forced jump, not necessarily a deliberate choice. What has been the impact of this one I will looked at? Then what are some of the distraction that people were faced when they are working from home? You can see TV noise. You can't get your kids to close to shut the TV off or switch the TV off. Kids interruptions, noise of neighborhoods, especially if you look at the low density. You can't stop people from doing their business simply because they're at work. WhatsApp group messages, phone calls from colleagues, radio noise, toilet flushing, intercom. Those are some of the top reasons that were given. If we were given an option to work from home permanently after the pandemic, would you take it? 24% said they're still assessing, 33% said no, 43% said yes. This 43% has now gone down to 33%, and it's likely to go down significantly. One of the findings that we got from this particular investigation, and also globally, if you look at other research that have been done, is that the reason why people are struggling to work from home is what they're calling loneliness. They're really lonely. For example, when working from home, what do you miss the most from the office? Social support from colleagues, 66%. And people are underestimating the value of social support from colleagues. If you're working from the office, you can easily go into someone's office and check and seek for assistance, which is not possible when they're at home. You're afraid to call them because you don't know what they're doing, if they're busy. We don't know how they're going to react, but so the whole social support environment in the workplace was disrupted, but it's actually being reconfigured as we speak now, because that's the backbone of how people become productive. When people work together in a network environment, they become more productive. Okay, so and you can imagine those that are saying they're missing the office, about 23%, others miss free telephone and things like that. So employee wellness and product, there is ample evidence to link wellness at work to productivity. And here, I think as the previous speaker indicated, we are looking at physical health and mental well-being of the employees. Then that must be put in the context of what we call good jobs, okay? Jobs that are skilled, autonomous, supported and secure with good work-life balance and good income are those, that's when you tend to get the best in terms of productivity. And better physical mental health and less absenteeism tend to emerge out of that kind of arrangement. But if you look at Africa in general, we don't have really very good jobs. They are scarce in Africa if you look at good jobs. Let's look at some of the stats. This is the UK, for example. A survey of 25,000 health workers in the UK. They found the following: those who smoke are twice as likely to take time off. A study of Transport for London found workers with obesity take an average of 3 sick days more annually than those of the normal weight. And all these things were discussed by the previous speaker in terms of what is wellness. Those with severe obesity take 6 days more. So mental health issues cause significant loss in productivity, especially through what is called presentism, as I will show you now. This is a study that we did in Zimbabwe with a colleague of mine, Douglas Romuya. This study was actually published in a peer-reviewed journal later on. We started it as just an ordinary survey, but we then elevated it to a peer-reviewed journal, and it was published in 2016. What we found is that 72.3% of the surveyed Zimbabwean working population, because with over 1,200 employees who participated in this survey across almost 9 sectors of the economy. What we found is that 73% of the employees were in distress. This is mental health now. They were actually in distress, 72% in distress. Let's look at what actually is found in this kind of category. It's characterized by worry, difficulty in thinking clearly, feeling down, depressed, disturbed sleep, easily irritated, lack of energy, tense, easily becoming emotional, no longer have interest in people or things. Other symptoms experienced by this distressed group include feeling like they can't do anything anymore and can't face it anymore. Then what we also found was that 100% of the surveyed working population in Zimbabwe is experiencing depression, with all of them in a strongly elevated category. They've got depression symptoms somehow. If you look at all the 1,000, they've got depression symptoms. It's not a small issue to find that kind of finding in this country. And what are the symptoms? People are experiencing what is a feeling of everything is meaningless, and they can't see a way of escaping from their situation. Life is not worthwhile. They feel they would be better if they were dead. And you can imagine if 100% of employees feel they are better dead, how are they going to be productive when they feel like they can't enjoy anything anymore, and they wish they were dead? I just picked those two. There are many other somatization and other symptoms that we have looked at. So looking at that alone and extrapolate that in the current situation, where we know COVID has added to this and many other problems, it's very likely that productivity is suffering a lot. Because when people have got mental health problems, the unfortunate part is that unlike physical health, they will come to work because one, there's stigma. They are afraid to be labeled that they've got a mental problem, or they were, because normally in the African context, they will be told that they've got a spiritual problem, even if it's ordinary mental health. So what we are seeing in practice is that people would take a day off for a physical ailment, but they will come to work if they've got a mental health ailment, and create what is called presentism. They will come, but they will not be focused, and they will make errors and many other problems that are associated with the poor mental health in the workplace. Okay, let's also look at one of the studies that was done by this guy, Krekel, in 2019, which is just last year. Looked at Gallup database of employee well-being and firm performance. What I wanted to was, when you look at meta-analytic studies, that's the best form of evidence above, just below the experiment. So they looked at 339 independent studies from data accumulated by Gallup, covering the well-being and productivity of 1.8 million employees and performance of 82,000 business units, originating from 230 independent organizations across 49 industries, 73 countries. It's probably one of the best and one of the most comprehensive studies on well-being or wellness and productivity. Here is what they found in a graphical form. Okay, you can see there in terms of graphical form that when there is wellness, this is the correlation. You can see wellness is more correlated with the customer loyalty. When people have got better wellness, they give more, they give better customer service that lead to loyalty. Employee productivity 0.2, profitability 0.16, staff turnover 0.12, which means that if there is if employees got the right wellness and they are well, both physical and mental, staff turnover tend to go down. That's why there's a negative correlation there. And this you can relate. This is the business case for organization to go into wellness programs, because most of the people just do wellness programs simply because others are doing it. But there is financial benefits, value for the shareholder that can be created when the employees are well. Okay, so they also went a step further to look at a few industries in terms of the same correlations. As you can see here, you will notice that they are comparing the different finance, retail, service, and manufacturing. The same trend, though, you can see the highest in terms of contribution from wellness is customer loyalty, because people are being treated well. Employee productivity is second in terms of the strength of the correlation. Then profitability is the third, the staff turnover negative, which means you're saving money when you do that. you save money from people not turning over. So employee wellness, and there's plenty of research to show that high employee well-being leads to higher morale, subsequently leads to higher productivity. So this one I want you to just take note that sometimes when you're doing your study, employee wellness does not directly link to some of the outcomes that you expect. Because once people are well, it's very likely they're going to get motivated. And out of motivation, you get the benefits, or the economic and business indicators that we looked at. So that's how wellness works. So it is not just saying, I'm well, therefore productivity must go up. It has to impact on the motivation, positive emotions of the employee. So well-being and positive emotions lead to better innovation. This is another study that was done. Okay. Then Oswald in 2015, he did carry out an experiment that showed that increases in well-being were strongly associated with the increase in productivity of up to 12% in the real work tasks. Okay, so and even wellness in terms of general life events, according to Oswald in this study, what they found is life satisfaction at age 12, age 16, 18, and 22. If people are really satisfied with their life at those ages, they're likely to earn significantly higher in their life as they grow. So what is the way forward in terms of management? Given the above statistics, it is there is no reason why anyone would doubt the impact of wellness in terms of as a worth investment, in terms of how it impacts on productivity. I think leaders should now prioritize wellness as the value is very clear, but you must also be cognizant of the fact that employee wellness is a product of good practice, good management practice. You can't escape from that. There is no wellness to talk about if the organization is poorly run. There is no way they will not prioritize wellness. So the underlying factor is that you can't address wellness directly without addressing good management practice within the organization. So that's the starting point as far as my experience shows. If you go and impose a wellness program in a company that is poorly managed with bad management practices, it will be done as an awareness issue, but it will disappear within a few days, if not a few months, if not days. So things like autonomy, work-life balance, I think that can only exist in an organization with good leadership. A research by McKinsey in 2006 shows that a single point improvement in management practice leads to 27% jump in productivity. And that is not a small jump, it's a big jump. So what you're saying is, if you go and improve management practices in your organization, it's very likely that all the other indicators, the ultimate indicators, are going to jump, including wellness. Okay. Many organizations have done well during just based on my own interaction with some of the organizations, they've done well in terms of campaigns and everything. But for most of them, that's where it ends. They don't go beyond that. Campaigns, people must know they must eat healthy and things, but they don't go beyond that. So the need to prioritize well-being and mental health is very important. And also in indicators of performance contracts of executives and all managers with the supervisory authority, they must have indicators of wellness. And this will help you build a business case at board level. Most board members are really ignorant about wellness at all. So those are some of the issues that you need to look at. I'm done. Patrick?
Yes, thank you.
Hello?
Hello, Memory, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Yeah, sorry. I seem to be going in and out of reception there. But yeah, look, thank you for your presentation. It's certainly very relevant given what we've seen happening since COVID. And interestingly, how you make mention of the way in which it then brings into question the role of management practices or the willingness of managers to adopt best practice, which I think historically for us has been an issue for some time. Yeah. So thank you for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, what I would like to suggest is that we are now open to the time for Q&A. And Audra and Nesta, I don't know how best you would like to move at this point. Do we have any sort of burning questions that could be answered immediately?
Thank you, Patrick. I see there's a comment. Hello.
Hello.
Can we invite Dr. Tatira to give his comment?
Absolutely. So Dr. Tatira, if you're with us, please, can we have your comment?
Thank you, good people. Good morning. I hope you are well. I am Dr. Tatira. I'm actually getting in from Mutare. I live in Mutare. I practice in Mutare, but I've got a national approach to the health issues in the country, having been SEMA president for the past 8 years or so. So, I mean, my question was on issues to do with the funding. I mean, the two speakers have spoken so eloquently, I mean, concerning the way, I mean, workplace-related wellness can be, particularly, I mean, managed in Zimbabwe. But I wanted to find out, I mean, what has been the experience with the payment from fund managers. How willing are they to pay for wellness-related, I mean, services?
I struggled to pick up your question there, Dr. Tatira, and I'm hoping that our two speakers would have picked it up. Are you addressing it to any one speaker in particular?
I think to our first speaker.
To Maria.
Yes.
So Maria, if you're with us, I don't know if you heard that question.
Yes, so the question was the fund managers, how are they organizing to pay for the wellness related costs, basically, yeah? I'm really not sure with regards to the situation here in Zimbabwe, mainly because a lot of my work has been done overseas. What I know, what has happened in companies that I have addressed or worked at, there has been a budget, some kind of budget that has been specifically set for a wellness program. And like I said, initially, there used to be there was a lot of resistance to funding wellness programs because companies wanted to, they felt that it was a cost, and so they wanted a definite number on return on investment, which you can't, it's so difficult to do. So now that the perspective is switching from an ROI to a VOI, more and more companies, and also because more and more companies are realizing the benefits of having a wellness or a work site wellness program, especially with regards to productivity, as Memory has had so eloquently suggested in his presentation. More and more companies are now making sure and finding that, finding the money to actually fund these programs. So that's pretty much what's happening there. And I think as time goes by, especially with this onset of COVID that has been experienced globally, more and more people are really being driven to address employee wellness. They really are being driven to address it as something that is vital in order for the organization not only to survive, but to thrive. So with regards to what's happening in Africa and the companies in Africa, I'm not sure exactly, but I would, you know, my experience from overseas is that they now make an effort to find it. It's almost something that is not negotiable for many companies.
Thank you. Because I was coming on to the second part of my being here, which is something to do with the health funding. In 2012 I started modeling some capitation-based model of reimbursing service providers in the health sector, and we came up with something called Access to Health Medical Fund. Why? Because we had seen people, some premature hospital discharges from, patients being taken away from hospital because they have exhausted their global limit, so they said. And then there are also rigid management protocols that interfere with the ethical medical practice. You are told that when you are doing this procedure, you are supposed to use this certain quantity of consumables beyond which they don't pay. Indeed, sometimes the clinical picture would want to I mean, the clinical condition would want you to use more of a certain product that then becomes limited, and we think that is unethical. And we also think that people should not work and labor in vain. And this is why we came up with the Access Health Medical Fund, where we would want to keep people healthy through the wellness programs that you have been talking about. And we also want to treat the sick through the service providers. I mean, invariably people get unwell when they get sick and they want some treatment. And this is the work that service providers will do. We would want to protect families against ruin from medical bills through the fund, which is managed, I mean, ethically and properly, I mean, professionally with integrity. And we would want to remunerate providers adequately and satisfactorily through the fund. And this has been a bone of contention for so long, and then the impasses that then go on between service providers and the fund managers, leading to maybe patients going on without being treated. So we actually created a network of service providers throughout the country to allow uninterrupted service. If a patient is actually from Tare, they end up in Bulawayo, they are supposed to get some service there without paying anything else extra. And then a pool of patients, each of whom is headed to a special doctor of a specific doctor of their own choice. We don't want to force people to say, go to Dr. So-and-so because this is the one that we would want to do. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to have a fund that pays 100% through capitation. So there's no co-payments or extra costs as long as the service is covered by that package chosen by the member. But by and large, we are looking at industry to, I mean, employers to take charge and protect their employees so that they also benefit in the process. And a private health delivery system, as we know, usually complements the public system. And during this time, when there are industrial action in the public sector, there's no service that is going on. And if we have what a weak private sector, then the whole health delivery system in the country will definitely go down. And then talking about infections and emerging pandemics like the COVID era that we are in, it became very clear that we need to improve our institutions to the best standard possible, because we will not access the international health institutions that we are used to patronize during non-pandemic situations. And for example, if you are in Manicaland, Manicaland should treat its own people, Zimbabwe to Zimbabweans, and Africa to Africans. And how do we get there is if there's no money circulating within the health sector, like what is happening at the moment. I think that's what I had for you. I'm sorry to take your time, gentlemen.
No, not at all, Dr. Tatira, and thank you for your contribution. Maria, thank you for your response to him. I don't know if we have any other questions. I know we still have Memory with us. Do we have any questions or contributions? Or indeed comments?
Hello, Patrick.
Yes, Nesta.
Perhaps while Memory is still there, to have some conversation on putting the productivity agenda across. How do you actually do that?
Okay. Yeah, but I think when we remember the last time, I think it was in Mtare before COVID, when we talked about how do we make sure that we conscientize employers so that they focus on productivity. I think the uptake of that idea was very high. What will be needed are awareness campaigns in terms of sharing knowledge about productivity, because what we found in our own research is that there is lack of knowledge of what productivity is. Well, the majority of the employees think that when production goes up, the productivity has gone up, which is wrong. Productivity is always relative to the inputs used over 2 periods, comparing 2 periods. So that understanding is not there. And also always people think that when a company is profitable, it means it's productive. And again, it's not true that when a company is profitable, it means it's productive. A company can be profitable just by capitalizing on price. It could be a monopoly, and they really dictate the price. So they can increase their price and people have no choice. They can still make money out of that. But in highly competitive markets, when a company is profitable, you will find that it's very likely that it's productive. But there are methods for assessing. So people need to be trained, one, in understanding the concept of productivity, two, and being equipped in terms of the tools for analyzing and measuring productivity. And those tools are available. We've tried to do training for some of the organizations. And we also measure productivity in a number of organizations now. Like last year, we actually did 6 companies in terms of productivity assessments. A very useful information that comes out of there. What could also be important, like what is happening in South Africa, each sectors actually come together and we put together a framework for measuring productivity so that they can start sharing that information at sector level. That will help companies make decisions at sector level. That will also inform collective bargaining properly. Because if you base your collective bargaining purely on profits, you can actually make the wrong decisions. So there is scope for educating people, one, in terms of educating them, two, in terms of actually availing the tools that they can use to measure productivity. I would think that would probably be the best way to go.
Thank you, Memory. Thank you, Patrick. I don't see any more questions.
All right. So I guess what remains is to, again, take the opportunity to thank our 2 speakers and their contributions. I think that, I don't know, for myself, and it may well speak to the others that are in our audience, it really speaks to the place that we find ourselves as a nation, this interesting intersection of socioeconomic considerations and what could be done with a better analysis of what it is that is happening and what we could and should be doing to improving the lot of our lives, even as we try to come out of what is undeniably a very difficult economic period. So thank you to both our speakers. Nesta, thank you very much. I know on behalf of the Employers Confederation, you've made your time and you continue to invest these series of programs in our Adapt and Adjust program to make sure that whatever is lacking in terms of awareness, knowledge, experience with various employers is made ready for their consumption. And we thank you for all your efforts and your organization for making these platforms possible, and most importantly, continuous at a time when many people are looking to make more informed decisions. So if I may hand back to you, Nesta, to say goodbye to all our participants.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for steering the ship so well. Thank you, our resource persons. Thank you all for your input. What remains now is for us to focus more on the wellness issues and productivity so that we add value to the processes that we are working on for the benefit of our shareholders. Otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to sending you more invitations as we roll out more in our series, Adapt and Adjust. Have a great day ahead.